And good evening. Welcome to tonight's one-of-a-kind, I'm afraid many-of-a-kind meetings of Homewood City Council, May 11th, 2020. We are trying to take precautions tonight, and I anticipate we'll continue to take these precautions going forward during the pandemic of optional use of face mask, although encouraged, but it is optional, and we have a social distance rule in effect, and we have limited capacity for our room that's going to be regulated for tonight's meeting. So with that introduction, we will begin with, we have a call to order, and we'll begin with an invocation and pledge, and I believe Mr. Gwaltney is going to help us with our invocation, followed by a pledge. Please, everyone, rise.
Lord, thank you for this opportunity for us to come together tonight. Lord, give us the strength and the wisdom to make wise decisions for our city and the surrounding communities that we have representatives here from. Lord, as we go through this time of trial and tribulation, Lord, give us the strength to make wise decisions. Lord, protect us from those things that are out there that could cause harm to us. Lord, just be with the people in this room. Give us the strength to endure those challenges before us. This your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Face the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. All right, thank you. We'll begin with roll call. Ms. Melody.
Yes, Mr. Gwaltney.
Here.
Mr. Thames.
Here.
Mr. Higginbotham.
Here.
Mr. Wolverton.
Here.
Mr. McCluskey.
Here.
Mr. Jones.
Here.
Mrs. Smith. Here. Mr. Wyatt.
Here.
Mrs. Andress.
Here.
Mr. Harden.
Here.
And Mr. Wright.
Here.
Everybody's present. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Everyone's here. Thank you all for everyone being here. And first item, we'll entertain a motion to dispense with and approve of the minutes from April 27, 2020.
So moved.
By Mr. Harden.
Second.
And second by Mr. Thames. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And let me just take this moment too, just to mention, I know it's kind of obvious, but we are spread out with limited council members up front and council members, I'm sorry, up front and some still here at the dais. Those who are up front, to state the obvious, if there is anything substantive that is going to need to be said from you other than votes and things that we can deal with easily, you will actually have to come to this microphone, okay? And just to let all the wards know, we're going to rotate, okay? So we're not going to punish these wards out here, so we'll rotate. And all you hot shots up here, except I get to stay up here. All you hot shots, understand, we'll be rotating, okay? That's right. All right, so everybody hang in there with me as we get through this. All right, we do have some board vacancies to take up. And some approval. We have Ward 1 Park Board position. We only had one applicant, who was Philip Hodges. He is going to, that application period has expired. So Mr. Hodges will become the new Park Board Ward 1 representative. So congratulations to him, and Melody, I know you'll let all these folks know. Library Board also.
You didn't.
Yeah.
You had to
Oh,
vote.
I'm so sorry.
Second.
All right, so I have a motion from Mr. Thames, second by Mr. Gwaltney. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, so that is approved. I really wanted that authority, didn't I? So,
Hey, President Wright, just note on there too that he's going to finish out somebody's unexpired term because they had to drop.
yes, so,
this
yes.
won't be a
And just to make sure if there's any amendment, we'll have to revote on it. Mr. Hodges is going to serve out the unexpired term of Kathy Pope, who is replacing. And I assume there's no objection to any of that? Okay, all right. Thank you, Melody. All right, next position, Library Board. That application period also closed on May 1st. And we actually have 2 candidates, I believe, for that one, and interviews for that position are scheduled, so we will not be making an appointment on that one, and we'll wait to hear about the appointment after those interviews. Next is Board of Education, Ward 5. The application period for that position has expired as well, and we did have one applicant, Judy Truitt, who is being reappointed to that position, and since she is the only applicant, she will be the one appointed, but I will take a motion for approval.
I'll make a motion that we make Judy Truitt the Ward 5 Homewood Board of Education.
All right, motion from Mr. Harden and the second from Ms. Andrus. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, so that'll be another, I believe it is a 5-year, is it a 6-year term? 5-year term. 5-year term for Ms. Truitt. So congratulations and thanks to her. We also have 2 supernumerary positions on our BZA. Actually, that one's still open, and that one's actually going to remain open until June 1st. So no action on that tonight. And
Well, actually, we needed you to open it tonight.
I'm sorry?
The BZA has not been open. You're opening 2 positions tonight.
Oh, we have not opened, okay, I'm sorry, we're
No,
keeping
sir.
that open. Okay, so without objection, I don't need a vote on that. We will keep that open until we will open that up until June 1st, okay, Melody? And
Supernumerary positions, those are not wards.
They're not ward-specific, and they're used as, if some of the members can't be there for a quorum.
Substitutes.
And actually, I talked to Donna when y'all opened them tonight, both of the people that are in that position, she said they don't realize their terms expired, so we're going to let them know that you reopened it in case they want to reapply, then anybody else can apply as well.
All right, thank you. We also have Ward 2 Historic Preservation Board that we also need to open, and Melody will open that one up till June 1st as well without objection.
Yes, sir.
All right, so that'll get us into starting our agenda. We will first begin with our consent agenda, which we have several items.
We need you to vote on the agenda, though.
Oh, excuse me, because we did not amend it, did we? All right, we actually have an unamended agenda. I will entertain a motion for approval by Mr. Jones, second by Mr. McCluskey. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, so tonight's agenda is approved, and then moving on to the consent agenda. Several items on there. I don't know if any discussion on that, on any of these or not, but if not, I'll entertain a motion for approval of tonight's consent agenda. By Mr. Gwaltney. Second by Mr. Thames. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, so all those consent agenda items are approved. That gets us into our first item for our old business agenda, 070120, which is a public hearing that was held on March 9th, 2020 for consideration to rezone property at 1619 Oxmoor Road from R5 to a C-1C. The applicant was Riverbrook LLC, doing business as Riverbrook Design and Construction. Owners Lee and Kevin Mizzo, for the purpose to permit the utilization of an existing building for design and construction service business. All right, so we've already had a public hearing on this. That public hearing has been closed, so there won't be any more public comment tonight, but we do have, and we did get our first reading on March 9th, 2020. So I think the first thing we have to do is our second reading. Is that not right, Mr. Kendrick?
You certainly can. Yes, sir. You don't have.
Unless there's, does anybody want any further discussion on this before we move forward on a second reading? Okay, well, I guess we'll move forward with a second reading on this.
Yes, sir. It's an ordinance to regulate, further amend ordinance 1602, entitled a zoning ordinance and the zoning map of the city of Homewood. Whereas the Planning Commission of the city of Homewood has approved and recommended to the city council that the property described herein be rezoned from its current zoning classification R5 attached dwelling unit to the city of Homewood C1 office building district, C1C office building district. That the city council has found it necessary to set a public hearing for March 9th, 2020. Now therefore be ordained by the city council as follows, that the following described property described in Exhibit A at 1619 Oxmoor Road, being the same as hereby rezoned from the City of Homewood R5 attached dwelling district to the City of Homewood C1C office building district with proffered conditions as set out below, that the property will be used exclusively as an office building. 2, that no improvements other than and pursuant to the site plan attached as Exhibit 1 shall be made to the property, that no outside storage of any equipment or supplies is permitted on the property. 4, that the uses, that any uses other than is set out above on the property will be a violation of the zoning ordinance and subject the owner and the occupants to penalties provided pursuant to the zoning ordinance, which shall include injunctive relief. Section 5, that any change in the use of property other than provided herein will require rezoning of the property. Section 6, that the owner, its occupants, and its successors in interest to the property voluntarily submit themselves to the jurisdiction of the court and may be subject to enforcement of the conditions provided herein. Section 7, that the conditions on the use of the property as set out in Section 1 are covenants running with the land and shall be binding on the owner and any successors in interest until the property is rezoned from C1C. Section 2, that after the enactment of this ordinance, that the uses permitted herein applicable to C1C shall control the uses of the property. Section 3, again, that the public hearing was held on March 9th, 2020. Section 4, that the clerk shall give notice of the public hearing. Section 5, that any part of provision of ordinance declared to be unconstitutional or invalid by a court of competent jurisdiction, all of the parts provisions remain in full force and effect. Section 6, the ordinance shall become effective immediately upon its adoption by the city council and approval by the mayors, otherwise becoming law. Section A is the legal description. Section 1 is the site plan that's proposed as proffered by the owner of the property for the C1C zoning approval.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kendrick.
Hey, President Wright,
Yes.
I left on there, I don't think we need unanimous
Yeah,
consent.
I
Okay.
understand, thank you, I got it. All right, so the item, second reading is completed, the item is before us. Certainly open it for discussion, comments, motions, actions.
I'll just say,
And Ms. Smith, I'm gonna have to ask you to, so sorry. This is why we're gonna rotate.
awesome. I feel like I can't talk to anybody. Okay, I feel like I've been trying to communicate everything to everybody, so I've been trying to send the site plans that have come from the MISOs for the alternative plan that they have for the R5, if that's what happens. And I've also been trying to send y'all communications from the neighbors as much as I can. So, and just to keep that going, I didn't realize it, but I had gotten 3 more emails this afternoon from some of the neighbors on West Glenwood. So I've sent y'all all that material. I'm not making a judgment either way. I was just trying to keep everybody informed of kind of all the information that was coming through me, so that y'all would all have that for when you're making your decision. So, you know, we've discussed this. I sent the site plan for the R5 to the neighbors, so that they could see what the plan looked like, you know, as an alternative to what the plan was for the office. And they still, by and large, say they prefer the R5 to the C1C. So that's
Okay.
just reporting the facts.
All right, thank you. All right, any further discussion, questions? Yes, Ms. Wolverton?
I could be wrong, but I think when we left this off, we talked about presenting those, and so I just thought for the public that are here, it might be prudent to just present what we did receive if Brian had those, just to kind of compare and contrast.
Okay, hold on a second. Let's see. Hold on. Working on it.
I just felt like that's kind of how we left it, but I could be mistaken.
Yeah, she does.
Y'all want me to hold them up?
And we have.
I've got handouts as
We've
well.
got handouts too. that,
Okay, yeah.
Have a set of plans for everybody.
Yeah, I have no objection to you guys showing your renderings, and if you want to pass out additional materials, that's fine, but I I think we're generally familiar with it. We haven't seen the renderings, I don't believe, but,
I don't know which one is, I didn't get anything on it, which one?
Yeah, sorry, this is the, here, I've got it. I'm sending it to you right now, Brian.
Okay.
okay, then it's gonna pop up. It'll pop up on the screen. We'll be, we won't need that, unless you guys want to.
There's a little additional information that I'd like to.
All right, I'll let you go ahead and just, if you want to come into the microphone, I'll let you present those two to, just for,
Kevin Misso, here, owner with my wife Lee, 1619 Oxmoor Road, trying to rezone C1C as opposed to the current R5. This is obviously our C1C, keep the existing structure on my right, your left. This is the current R5 here as well. Existing structure R5.
Those for sale
Could be for sale. Just be condos. Everything on the Hallman, Hallman's another condominium. We pulled comps this year. Everything sold in 12. It's about 600,000 for 3.2s. I think the largest will be a 5.4 here with 2-car parking. I don't think the Hallman units, no other condos have parking like we would if it was R5. But we also had handouts highlighting our petition members. I think two are in the back here on West Glenwood. Amber actually butts up to it, been here 17 years, butting up to that little house and would not want this in her backyard. I think Mary's also lived on that street for a substantially long time. Most of you, many of you may know her. But I highlighted the 17. Did we want to pass them? We want to pass them out? Would it be okay to pass them out?
no, I don't think we can, it's really not the purpose of tonight. We've had the
Gotcha.
public hearing, so we're probably not going to permit that. I had no problem with you showing this. And again, I'm not trying to restrict you or anything, but I think for purposes of the public hearing, I mean, that was open and closed, so.
Okay.
Because this is, I don't want to get into one side and not hearing from the other side, because this
Sure.
is not a public hearing, so.
I guess
Thank you
the-
very much for showing us the updated renderings, that's fine.
Sure. The overall point of that was I think there were 17 green dots close to proximity, but when I highlighted the 30 that I had out of the 60 that were also in proximity, it was overwhelming at how many people right there were for C1C.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you. Mr. Jones, I'm sorry.
Yeah, what I was trying to clarify, I mean, tonight's vote doesn't really have anything to do with the condo plan. I mean, it's really the C1C plan that we saw before, so I didn't see the relevance of even reviewing that. I mean, we have the information, but tonight's vote's pretty clear. It's an extension. I mean, we had the public hearing open and closed for the office building, and that's really what we're dealing with tonight.
Okay. All right, thank you, sir. All right, yes, Ms. Andrews, sorry.
Kevin, can you clarify what you meant when you said there were 60 green dots and 30 were in favor? What you just said?
Yeah. Just showing you from a distance. They had a plan, they showed their orange dots, showing how close they were. I went back and just did the 30 of my 60-plus names that would rather see the house. I just highlighted my green to show how they are also in proximity.
Who's adjacent? That's what I want to know.
12 of them came. So we've got 1608, 1604, 1602, all those are Oxmoor, you can see it from the front. We've got 101 West Glenwood, we've got Mary right here, can't remember her address.
We have to get to a microphone, guys.
Yeah,
Oh,
good.
I see.
I got you. Sorry, thank you.
I got you. You may just come
Go
back
ahead,
and go
yeah.
on. So I just highlighted everyone, green are all in proximity, West Glenwood, East Glenwood, Oxmoor. It just shows, if you look at, the trees to the forest is I guess it's my opinion and how I've explained this. There's so many people, and even being out over the last couple of months, driving the cart and walking, people asking, where are we on this, where are we on this? It's just, it truly is overwhelming on the amount of people that are waiting to see how we all rule here, that are just asking. And a lot of these, I couldn't even get of the other 30 names that were still on Roseland, further up Mayfair, Kensington. There's so many other highlighted green marks here that I couldn't even get on here. The green are in favor, C1C, orange are R5.
All right, just want to answer the questions.
Follow-up question. Can I ask Ward 4, can you interpret that data for me on y'all's behalf as well?
I will say, from the people that I've heard from, I'm sorry, this mask is hard. The people that I've heard from, I have heard from, well, Amber spoke in the original public hearing, but other than that, the people that I've heard from specifically recently are the people who are opposed to the C1C. I mean, I have their names. It's essentially the same families who came to the public hearing, the Browns, the Chancellors, the Littons, the Tuckers. Yes. So some of those same people, and they're the ones who have continued to communicate with Alex and I. And Mary Bishinsky, that was another one. I think she is on West Glenwood. No, not on West Glenwood? Okay. Okay.
To the microphone, sir.
Good thing this isn't awkward. I think to answer your question, the people we've heard from are mostly, with one notable exception, are the properties that are closest to this property, if that's what you're asking.
That's what I'm asking.
Yes, I'm sorry.
They're the orange.
Yes.
Okay. Questions answered? Jennifer?
It is.
Okay. All right. Any further questions, discussion? Okay. Certainly entertain a motion so we can at least address the issue at hand. Yes, Mr. Jones?
I guess we need a vote positive, I guess.
Yeah.
So I'd make a motion to approve the rezone to C1C. or
So a
C1.
motion to approve. Second by Mr. Thames,
That
and
is 2773.
2773. This will be a roll call vote, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Gwaltney?
No.
Mr. Thames?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Higginbotham?
No.
Mr. Wolverton?
No.
Mr. McCluskey?
No.
Mr. Jones?
No.
Mrs. Smith?
No.
Mr. Wyatt?
No.
Mrs. Andress?
No.
Mr. Harden?
No.
And Mr. Wright?
No. All right, so that motion is going to fail, and that item will fail. Next item up is going to be 08-10-19. This is going to be a public hearing for tonight. And just to let, I don't know if anyone is here for this public hearing, but if anyone is, we will first let the applicant speak to the item, and after the applicant is done with the item, if anyone else is here to speak to it, there's not many people here, so I'm not sure if there are any, but anybody else here can come to the microphone. Then after we are done with the in-person public hearing, we'll address if anyone is online with us on our Zoom to see if anyone else wishes to speak in favor or against this item. So I just want to make sure how the groundwork is going to work. So with that, and I would ask, thank you, Melody. I know this is incredibly awkward. We're all in this together, right? Please, we'll try not to touch the microphone, just so we don't, we'll just be as respectful with that as we can. If it happens, we'll come clean it again, so no problem. Everybody just, we'll do the best we can. All right, so this is a public hearing. This is 08-10-19, which is a public hearing that was continued to tonight for consideration for the city to vacate land between 904 Highland Road and 909 Irving Road. This coming to us from Holly Polk and Will Gardner, and through Wyatt Pugh and Greg Cobb with BEZ. And we will, the hearing is open, and so with the open hearing, I don't know if the applicant is here or not who wishes to speak in favor or against this item. If so, please come forward. Or Mr. Pugh, if you would, please, sir. Oh, okay. Is the applicant online? Okay, thank you. Then we will go a little bit out of order. The applicant's not online, so Brian, if we can let the applicant, if we have him identified, or her identified, if she can go ahead and speak, or him speak to this item, please.
Hey, this is Will Gardner. I think Holly and Brad are on the line as well. Yeah, this is the property between mine and Holly's house. Is a 10-foot alley where there's water running down into the really into the Polk's backyard. The houses that Willow built after we built our house on Irving Road, and to vacate the alley, curb appeal, and I think Craig's on the line as well, would as part of the vacation would fix the drainage to both the Polk's house and down into the city garden.
All right, thank you for that. We did had trouble hearing that, and with that, I'm gonna let Mr. Thames, I think, echo some of your thoughts. I believe, was that Jason Hale? Was that?
That was Will Gardner.
Okay, I'm sorry. Mr. Gardner, I'm gonna let Mr. Thames, we could make it out a little bit, but I'm gonna let Mr. Thames kind of summarize a little bit about what we have here.
Okay, this is the alley between Irving and Highland Road. Now, this alley terminates into the back of a piece of private property on the western side and then opens up into the Sims Garden property on the eastern side. The applicants would like for us to vacate the alley to them so that they can do some stormwater remediation, and in the process, this remediation should help to take care of drainage issues we have onto the Sims property as well. They have contacted all of the adjoining property owners. I believe have a petition signed in support, and have already been, as a matter of fact, granted a permission to work in the right-of-way a meeting or two ago. I'm not sure if they proceeded with that work, but they're here now for us to potentially vacate the alley to them.
All right, and I do have the petition that is, looks like there was about 8 or 9 petitioners and about 6 or 7 folks supporting it. So we do have the petition in front of us as part of our record. And so with that, I know we've talked about this, and at least I remember it and quite familiar with it, but does anybody have any further questions or discussions on this? Okay, first of all, let me begin with, is anyone present, anyone else present wish to speak in favor or against this item as part of the public hearing? Okay, I don't see anyone present who wishes to speak in favor or against this item. Is there anyone on Zoom who wishes to speak further on this?
No requests right now.
No request. All right, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. And we've already had some comments from council, but I don't know if we had any further comments from council or discussion. If not, I'll entertain a motion for approval on this item or action on this item.
So moved.
Second.
All right, that is a motion by Mr. Thames and a second by Mr. Gwaltney. And this is not a roll call vote, is it?
It's a resolution.
This is a resolution, okay.
67.
Gotcha.
A resolution assents to the request for the vacation by the petition.
All right, so it's not a roll call. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, it seems 11-0 vote. And that will get us to our next item of, and I'm sorry, Mike, that was resolution
2067.
2067. Thank you.
Yes. Sorry. 2067.
2067, that's what I got. All right. All right, next item is going to be 120320. This is another public hearing which will follow the same guidelines I just went through. This is a public hearing that was continued to today, tonight, for consideration to rezone property at 2927 Central Avenue from a C1 office building district to an I2 institutional district. The applicant is Chris Eckroat. Did I do it right?
Yes.
Terrible,
absolutely.
okay. Who is the owner with the Catholic Diocese of Birmingham to permit the development of a surface parking lot in support of adjacent Our Lady of Sorrows Church. The Planning Commission had a vote on this of 6-0 in favor. And this, again, is a public hearing. And as we went through the rules a little bit earlier, we're going to begin to let the applicant speak to this item first. So, Chris, I'll just do that. I'll let you speak first, sir.
Yes. My name is Chris Eckroat. I'm with Caprine Engineering. I represent the Catholic Diocese of Birmingham and Our Lady of Sorrows Church. Before I get into the presentation, I had emailed PDFs of everything that I'm going to show to the council. Do I need to put up an easel or, for the benefit of everybody on Zoom, or are they going to have access to the information? Do I need to do that? I mean, I'm happy to do it. I'm prepared to. It's up to you.
Unless Brian has it where he could do it.
Well, Brian has it right there. He has it.
Oh, okay, good.
Okay, good.
All right,
So,
good.
and
that
and
works
I think-
perfect. That was what I was hoping for that.
And I think Zoom does have access to that. so.
Great. I was hoping for that.
However many thousands are tuned in, so.
Yeah. Good deal. Good deal.
Oh, I'm sorry. Further challenges, okay? Good.
Sure.
Yeah, on the sidewalk, don't get us started.
Pardon us, Chris, please
All right.
proceed, okay?
No worries. As I said, I represent Our Lady of Sorrows Catholic Church. The property we're speaking about is the former Gorey and Regan building, adjacent to the church. The church acquired it not quite a year ago with the idea to put some additional surface parking out there to service the parishioners during really what it amounts to the school year and beyond, really. But we have a real issue on Sunday with a lot of folks trying to get into a little parking lot, and you've got Sunday school and a lot of different things going on. So we're having some issues with turnover and so forth. And this this building was purchased with the hope to construct surface parking there. We're able to show 42 spaces at this point. We've had some discussions with city staff regarding the layout of the parking lot. We haven't gone through the formal site plan process in order to get through these entitlement processes first regarding the rezoning. The purpose of the rezoning is that the site is currently zoned C2. C1. And with the proposed zoning being I2 to get it the like zoning with the adjacent parcel, which is the church. With that being said, I'm open to any questions that you may have at this point. I also, attending via Zoom, is Stephen Monk, who is our attorney, and Charles Ferlisi, who's representing Father Muller himself in this. But they are remote at this point. And I've got them on cell phone in case they want to text in any statements that I may make.
I will give, and you tell me, do they need to speak in further or? Okay.
I've got it right now.
Okay,
unless
gotcha.
y'all really think I'm doing a terrible job.
I won't
They're
burden.
probably in favor of it.
I know the position on it, but I didn't know if there had to be any further explanation from them.
Yeah.
All right, granted.
If they see me make a real big miss, I'm sure I'll start getting texts.
Okay.
So.
All right, well, I'll tell you what, thank you for that. We may do a little bit of, we may be swapping the microphone a little
Sure,
bit as we go along, so we may have some questions. So first of all, Mr. Wolverton, and then Mrs. Smith, do you have a question? Okay, Mr. Wolverton, I'll let you go first.
So just a quick clarifying question. I know you'd mentioned the property was purchased roughly a year ago, is that correct? Kind of a two-part question. Did the church have any other intentions for the parcel, first of all? And then secondly, as we just found out with another rezoning case where property was purchased for a purpose, but was not rezoned before the purchase happened. So I guess I'm just trying to sort out, was there another intended purpose for the property? If so, what it was, and if not, why are we coming now versus during the purchase period? As a
To my knowledge,
purchase.
there's no other purpose for this parcel than parking, surface parking. And why it wasn't done during purchase is,
As a contingency.
because I don't know why it would need to be, because we would do this after the purchase. We when we initially started this process, we didn't really, a parking lot is a permitted use within C2. Once we got into the process, we had some discussions with staff, particularly Mr. Kendrick, who said, no, we need to rezone it to I2, or, I'm sorry, so that the zonings match. I keep saying C2, but it's C1.
With the adjacent property.
That's right. Mr. Kendrick himself said, let's get it all contiguous.
I've really not been involved in that. That's a decision that you made with the staff.
Or either way, staff, it's with staff's recommendation that we get it all where it needs, or from a zoning standpoint, where it needs to be.
So I happen to be consulted on this. I'm the head of the property committee for the diocese. And the seller, some guys out of Coleman, were probably as bad of a seller as I've seen and difficult to deal with as I've ever seen. We had some title problems. They wouldn't let us work them out, so they actually dropped the contract for a while and got the title problems worked out and then went back under contract with them. They threatened to sell it to some other people. So they didn't really have a whole lot of time to solve any zoning problems, and I think didn't really realize that they probably had a zoning issue. No one was really focused on that, the people who were involved in it. But the title problems were such that became their big thing is, you know, we got to solve these title problems. The seller said, we're not solving them, you either close or don't close. I've never known a seller to do that before. So they were really, really tough to deal with. And so the zoning never even came into anybody's purview because I think they felt like they just had to get the property closed and move on down the road. And I don't think anybody ever thought about, hey, we need to get this zoned so it's zoned like everything else.
He would. All right. Thank you, Mr. Harden. And Mr. Harden, and you will recuse yourself from this vote, right? Okay, I assume you would. All right, thank you. I just want to make that clear to everyone. All right, did that answer your question, Mr. Wolverton?
Yes, sir, I think so. Yeah, I was just, in light of the previous rezone, I just thought it was prudent to point out.
Okay, Mrs. Smith, if you can give up the microphone again. Oh, even better, here, we got an extra microphone.
Mine is a simple question. Is the ingress and the egress are both on that back side off the alley? There's no ingress or egress off Central, right? It's just all
Correct.
coming in from the back, from the alley?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Smith. Mr. Thames?
Is the parking lot at street level, or is there a retaining wall along Central Avenue?
We're going to have to create it's about a 3.5-foot retaining wall. There's an existing one there, and we're going to step back a little bit, and then we're going to have another about 3. It's going to vary over its length, but it's roughly 3.5 feet average height, somewhere in there. It's not quite level. It's the lot doesn't seem like it has a lot of fall. It's got a pretty decent amount of fall across it. The Gorey and Regan building was multi-story and had different levels coming in and so forth. So we're having to deal with all that. And that alley's got a little bit of a tip to it. I don't know if you can, the existing conditions might show it a little bit better, but it's got a tilt.
But
and we tried to be aggressive but we can't just, can't get too
But the
aggressive.
retaining wall it looks like it's stepped back a few feet from the sidewalk, is that right?
Yes, there's one along the sidewalk that
Right.
we're intending to leave, and then it stepped back about 3-ish feet or so, 3 or 4 feet, and then we go up with another 3.5 foot wall, more or less. And
And tell me about the landscaping around the perimeter.
the landscape around the perimeter, on the north side, we are leaving about a 7.5 foot strip, more or less, through there. It varies because the property line and the curb line aren't quite parallel. We're trying to leave as much as we can right there. Some of the plants that are over there may get damaged during construction, so we're prepared to supplement some of that landscaping. We're also going to put a 6-foot privacy fence along that north line to help with any lighting or privacy issues that we might have with the residents along the north side. Along the Central Avenue side, we're planning to put some screening there. We're going to work with city to get the right kind of screening. Right now, I'm thinking some tea olives to help screen the guardrail that's going to be along there. And, just plant with some bushes and try to make it look nice. We intend to abide by the City of Homewood tree ordinance which I believe, as I read it, has about 6 trees that we're going to need here, but we're going to work with city staff to finalize that and make sure we get the right number of stuff, plant material on this site. We haven't done a full landscaping plan at this point. Again, we want to get through these public hearings, and then we're going to, do what we need to do to get it, landscaped properly.
All right, Mr. Gwaltney?
So, Mr. Cobb, this question is, I guess, maybe aimed at you since Mr. Pugh stepped out. Considering this lot is going from having a structure with a small parking lot to becoming a big watershed into our storm sewer, what have we done to either remediate there, or what calculations are taken into account to remediate this massive load of stormwater that's going to be dumped into our system now so that we don't run into issues down the road?
I can actually address that. With the building on the site, we're actually providing additional around 800 square feet, as I recall. I believe it's actually on one of the site plans. If not, I have done the calculation. That's right. We're adding 857 of additional green space out there. We do consider the building that was on site, that's impervious surface. So it was pretty well covered, and we're holding some buffers. Our parking lot isn't quite touching the right-of-way. It's held off pretty well. So we're actually in the positive in terms of green space on this site.
And the second comment I was going to make is, as maybe glance at the new tree ordinance. Maybe one day we can get it out. But it does have some items in there that are related to planting trees in the islands. When you have your 10 spaces, then an island, that helps soften the buffer a little bit, or soften the parking lot. So it's just not this expansive parking lot like you see on the rest of the campus.
Again, like I said before, we've got to get into the formalized site plan approval process. At this point, we're just trying to get through our rezoning so we can do that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gwaltney. Any further, Mr. Jones?
I was just wondering, and I'm sure Ward 1 reps can attest to this, when you're over there in the morning, the traffic is really almost scary when school is in session. Is there any openness to maybe look at a possible improvement upon where drop-off happens, and maybe utilizing the parking lot as something you could utilize in the morning? I mean, since you'll have that property, I'm just trying to look to find if there's a possible improvement to the traffic flow during drop-off and pickup times.
I'll bring that up. I'll be honest with you, I don't have a direct answer for that. This is the first time I've heard that. And this is just on regular mornings, right? This isn't just mainly the Sunday.
Obviously not now.
Our peak that we think of is really that Sunday morning, because it can be a madhouse. I go to church there. But no, I'll definitely bring that up, and I think the church is always open and wants to be a good neighbor to the city of Homewood. So I think that'd be well received and considered.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Jones. Any further questions or comments? All right, I think where we are, still on the public hearing, thank you, sir. Is anyone else present who wishes to speak in favor or against this item? Please come forward. Seeing no one, I'll turn to our Zoom participants. Is anyone in our chat room signed up?
Nobody on Zoom.
And indication is no one else wishes to speak in favor or against this item. So with that, I will go ahead and close the public hearing. And first item is going to be our first reading.
Yes, sir. This is an ordinance to amend Ordinance 1602 entitled Zoning Ordinance and a Zoning Map of the City of Homewood. Whereas the Planning Commission has approved and recommended to the City Council that the property described herein be rezoned from its current zoning classification C1 Office Building District to City of Homewood I2 Institutional District, Zoning District. Whereas April 13th was the time and place for the public hearing as advertised, which was continued to tonight. Now therefore be it ordained by the City Council that the property described herein, Lot 5A, according to the survey of Lots 5 and 6, T.J. Byers subdivision, is recorded map book 35, Clifton Land survey. B, and the same is taken out of the current City Homewood zoning classification C1 Office Building District and rezoned to the City of Homewood I-2 Institutional District. Section 2, that and from and after the enactment of this ordinance, that the uses applicable to a section to the zoning classification I-2 and institutional district shall be control the uses of the property made the subject of this ordinance. Section 3, that the time and place for the public hearing has been advertised by the city clerk as required by law. The next section, of any part of provision of ordinance declared to be unconstitutional and invalid by a court of competent jurisdiction, all the parts of provision of the ordinance shall remain in full force and effect. And Section 6, the ordinance shall become effective immediately upon its adoption by the city council and mayor, or its approval by the mayor, or otherwise becoming law.
Thank you, Mr. Kendrick, and I will first of all entertain a motion for unanimous consent.
I do have a comment I'd like to
Well,
make.
we're not in comments right now, yeah,
Gotcha.
but we do have another opportunity for them, okay?
Sure.
Right now, we're on unanimous consent. Do I have entertain a motion for unanimous consent? By Ms. Andrus, second by Mrs. Smith. Roll call vote, Melody.
Mr. Gwaltney? Mr. Thames? Mr. Higginbotham? Mr. Wolverton? Mr. McCluskey? Mr. Jones? Mrs. Smith? Mr. Wyatt? Mrs. Andrus? Mr. Harden? And Mr. Wright.
Yes. So that's going to be a 10-0-1 vote. Thank you, Mr. Harden. And, so that that will prevent unanimous consent, will it not? No, you have to. You have to. I mean, that's just.
No, not this. I didn't think I did. This is just to vote on the first reading. You didn't have to abstain from that. I'm abstaining from the second vote.
Yeah, because Alice doesn't have to abstain too.
I have to abstain from the second vote because my wife.
Oh. Okay, so, all right, so with that said, well, hold on a second. Mike, can we prepare that for our unanimous consent? All right, I'll entertain a motion for an additional roll call. Move to reconsider by Mr. Jones, second by Mr. McCluskey, and a rejuvenated roll call vote. Ms. Melody, please.
Mr. Gwaltney? Mr. Thames? Mr. Higginbotham? Mr. Wolverton? Mr. McCluskey? Mr. Jones? Mrs. Smith? Mr. Wyatt? Mrs. Andrus? Mr. Harden? And Mr. Wright.
Yes, and so we do have unanimous consent approval. And now the motion is before us. Mr. Gwaltney, I know you had something to say, sir.
I did, thank you. Sorry, I jumped the shark. So I guess one of the things that comes to mind whenever I think about this property is just kind of its position in the city, sitting on one of our most beautiful thoroughfares that's split lane, very green. Overall, I would consider it a core street. So the use as a parking lot just doesn't strike me as the appropriate use. Especially when you consider that, nothing, negative toward the diocese and OLS and what's going on there, but when I ran a quick calculation in Bluebeam, most of the campus, I think over 50% is already parking. So taking up another piece of prime real estate in the city for parking, I just don't think is the appropriate move. There has to be some other solutions they can explore. Secondarily, the fact that if it is used as parking, it's going to be used for a couple of hours a week. And I still think that's another strike against it being on one of our most core and beautiful thoroughfares in the city. So that's just my observations and thoughts.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Gwaltney, any further comments? Or Mr. Thames?
Has the church on Sunday mornings, and I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going the other direction. I'm heading downtown. I assume you're using the library parking lot probably for overflow parking currently.
Somewhat. I mean, the church has recognized that the city's been very cooperative and understanding with them using that parking lot. They're trying not to burden the city anymore. And honestly, most of the parishioners are trying to park behind the church. I mean, it's kind of a mess, but yeah, I mean, some of the parishioners are clearly using that library parking lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I just bring it up, not that that's a negative, I think that would be a positive. I think it's something the city would be more than happy for the church to utilize more if more parking is needed. So just some thought.
Thank you, Mr. Thames. Any further questions or discussion? Okay, seeing none, I will entertain a motion for approval or action on this item. All right, so we have a motion to approve by Mrs. Smith. Do I have a second? We have a second by Ms. Andrus, and this will be a roll call vote. Ms. Melody?
Mr. Gwaltney?
No.
Mr. Thames?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Higginbotham? Mr. Wolverton? Mr. McCluskey? Mr. Jones? Mrs. Smith? Mr. Wyatt? Mrs. Andrus? Mr. Harden? And Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Motion fails. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 4.
5 to 4 failed? Okay. 5 to 4 with 2 abstentions. So the
Are
motion.
we going to get a copy of the meeting minutes?
I'm sorry?
Are we going to have minutes or anything as to? Okay. Is it, how can I get a copy? Just call the city, will they?
Yeah.
You can email me, the city clerk. It's on the City of Homewood website, or I can give you my
Yeah,
email address.
those are public records, so absolutely. All right, so that.
So we have 5 nays, 4 yays,
5
and
nays,
2
4
abstain.
yays, and fails with 2 abstentions. All right, thank you, sir. Next item, it's going to be 060420, which is a request for mid-year review per our city council fiscal policy, coming to us from Robert Burgett, our finance director, and our assistant city clerk, and Melody Salter, our city clerk and assistant finance director. And we're going to begin with this item with a report from finance. Mr. Jones.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. The Finance Committee met May the 4th via Zoom. It's a lot of fun. And, but I do appreciate Mr. Burgett and Ms. Salter's work on this. This is obviously coming at a tough time, but we believe the report was thorough, and we're, actually optimistic about where we are financially. We are going to look at another, in 6 weeks, maybe do a review past the mid-year review, but as per the fiscal policy, we did go through the whole report, and after taking that report and discussing it, we voted 5-0 to accept the report.
All right, so thank you, sir. It comes out of a favorable vote out of finance to accept the report, so I think that is an affirmative motion and approval. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, so the fiscal policy mid-year review report item is met. So thank you, Mr. Jones.
And also, there was another, we actually accepted the report, and then there was a motion.
We also,
There
I'm
was a
sorry.
motion to make the transfer
And
for
we
the
had-
fiscal policy.
All right, so,
Is
and
that
we
not
have
on
a motion to approve transfer. All right, you want to speak to that, Mr. Jones, or? All right,
You have the dollar amount there? Yes,
yes, did.
it's $152,355 per the fiscal policy. It's just going to be moving from the general fund cash to the cash reserve for economic uncertainty. It's not an expense account, it's just moving from an, to the, quote, rainy day fund.
Right. All right, so just for clarity, and that came out of finance at that time at a 5-0 vote. And just to affirm the motion to approve transfer of the funds, frankly, to the rainy day fund. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, so that $152,000 transfer to rainy day fund is approved as well. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Yes, it would be a resolution. Yeah. Yes, it should be 2068. Thank you. All right, next item, 170320, request to consider adding crosswalks at the intersection of Forest Drive and Cliff Place in Edgewood. This item coming to us from Clark Bailey and Councilor Patrick McCluskey, and we will begin with a report from Public Safety. Mr. McCluskey.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee met and voted 5-0 to recommend approval. The motion was made by Councilor Andrus and seconded by Councilor Wyatt.
All right, thank you, sir. And I believe we do have an ordinance here, so we're going to need a first reading. Mr. Kendrick.
Yes, there's an ordinance to provide for the installation of a pedestrian crosswalk across Forest Drive on the west side of the intersection of Forest Drive with Cliff Place and across Cliff Place on the south side of the intersection of Cliff Place with Forest Drive in the city. Be it ordained by the City Council as follows. The Chief of Police shall be directed to install a pedestrian crosswalk across Forest Drive on the west side of the intersection with Forest Drive with Cliff Place and across Cliff Place on the south side of the intersection of Cliff Place with Forest Drive. Section 2, that all drivers and motor vehicles defined by the Highway Code shall yield to pedestrians located within the crosswalk as defined here and above. Section 3, that any person that violates the provisions of this ordinance upon conviction shall be punished as provided by Section 1-8 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Homewood. Section 4, that all of the ordinances or parts thereof contrary to the provisions hereof are repealed. Section 5, any part or provision of the ordinance declared to be unconstitutional or invalid by a court of competent jurisdiction shall not affect any other parts or provisions of the ordinances. Section 6, as provision of this ordinance shall become effective immediately upon its adoption by the City Council, approved by the mayors, or otherwise becoming law.
Thank you, Mr. Kendrick. And so we do have an ordinance here, so I will first entertain a motion for unanimous consent by Mr. McCluskey, second by Mr. Gwaltney, and roll call vote, Ms. Melody.
Mr. Gwaltney?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Thames?
He stepped out.
Record say stepped out for a minute. Mr. Higginbotham?
Yes.
Mr. Wolverton?
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith? Mr. Wyatt?
Yes.
Mrs. Andrus? Mr. Harden? And Mr. Wright.
Yes,
So that's 10-0.
10-0 for unanimous consent. And now I will entertain a motion for approval by Mr. McCluskey, second by Mr. Gwaltney, and another roll call vote. Melody?
Mr. Gwaltney?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Thames? He's still out, or abstaining, okay. Mr. Higginbotham?
Yes.
Mr. Wolverton?
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Jones? Mrs. Smith? Mr. Wyatt? Mrs. Andrus? Mr. Harden? And Mr. Wright.
Yes, and so that's going to be approved 10-0, and that'll be ordinance, I think it's 2773. First one. Next item is going to be 180320, which is a request to consider permission to install a parking pad in the city right-of-way at 1200 Roseland Drive. This coming to us from Ryan Thompson and through Wyatt Pugh with our BEZ department. And we're going to begin, first of all, with a report from Special Issues. Mrs. Smith, I'm sorry to let her step this first. Or you can show your sister.
The committee met by Zoom last week and heard from the petitioner. And I will say this, while the address of the home is 1200 Roseland, the parking pad is actually going to be on the Woodland side of the house, not on Roseland. The committee met and voted 5-0 to recommend approval pending the proper indemnification agreement. Motion was made by Mr. McCluskey and seconded by Ms. Andrus.
All right, thank you. And what was that vote? Was it 5-0? Thank you. All right, 5-0. And Mr. Thompson, I assume?
I'm actually Jared Bussey. I'm the architect representing the Thompsons.
Okay, and did you have anything specifically to speak to on this item?
I'm really just here to answer any questions if you have
All
them.
right, fair enough, fair enough. All right, if anyone has any further questions or discussions on this? Do we have any
A
visuals?
site plan was submitted. I'm not sure if it's available.
It was presented last week.
I do have
It's attached to the resolution.
handouts.
Okay.
Maybe big enough to show.
It may not, Brian may not have that. Why don't you show it to Mr. Thames, since he asked for it, if you can, without. All right, any questions, further questions, discussion? I'll entertain, Mr. James, please,
Is this
sir.
meant to be used as, I guess, the main, I see it's got the one little single-car parking spot.
That's correct.
I guess this is meant to be sort of the main parking for the home?
Well, it satisfies that second parking requirement that's in the ordinance. Because of the corner lot and the way the house is sited, there's just no room in the existing driveway. So they are renovating their home right now. They're not changing the footprint, but as part of that renovation, it's convenient to address this ongoing problem. And as part of that, there is a side door along Woodland that really will be used for day-to-day ingress and egress from this new parking pad.
Was there any thought given to putting a pad off the alley on the eastern side of the property, which I guess would be the backyard?
We did consider that alley. It's the access alley is a little bit tough, and then in terms of grades and just the condition of the alley and the distance from the house, we would, for it to really be convenient from the alley, we would need to be paving quite a bit just to get the car near the house. Otherwise, it's just a long trek from that back part of the property. It's such a wide lot along Roseland. In terms of other access on the Roseland side, the grades are difficult from the street to the finished grade at the house. And so this really became two things. Woodland's much less trafficked. There's a lot less traffic going along Woodland and Roseland, and the grades are certainly better to put the car on that side. That was our thought.
All right, thank you, Mr. Thames. Any further questions or discussion? We have a motion for approval by Mrs. Smith and a second by, Mr. McCluskey. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. That's going to be a vote of 9-2 in favor, I believe.
Who voted no? Okay.
Okay, that'll be resolution 20-69.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. All right, next we have our committee referral agenda. If everyone can look at that if they haven't already, and I'll entertain a motion for approval of the committee referral agenda by Mr. Hickenbotham, second by Mr. Wyatt. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, so the committee referral agenda is approved. That gets us to other new business, 070520, which is a request to set a public hearing for consideration of property at 720 Shades Creek Parkway being changed from I-2 to C1. The applicant is Shoal Engineering Company on behalf of Shades Valley Evangelical Lutheran Church for the purpose to rezone the eastern portion of that property. And that did come through Planning Commission with 7-0 vote, and we will set that for a public hearing for June 8th.
Question.
Yes, sir.
Could I get minutes from the Planning Commission meeting for that? Could I just request that?
Yes. Melody, can you help us with that?
Yes, sir. As soon as they're prepared, we will give them to you.
Yes. Just, whatever.
I'm making myself a note.
Yeah, I just want to see what the discussion was.
There's a recording, probably.
A recording? Okay. If somebody can send me the link, that'd be great. Thank you.
All right.
I'll make a note, check with Donna and Fred, and I actually set in on that one too, so we'll try to get it to you.
All right. Thank you for your help
Great.
on that,
Thank you.
Melody. All right. So that public hearing before us will be set for June 8th, 2020 at 6 o'clock. Next item, 080520, request to reconsider reimbursement for pump rental and property repair costs related to flooding at 2832 Linden Avenue. This coming to us from Mark and Darby Westfall with Hummingbird Properties LLC. And we had a previous resolution on this, 20-63, that was passed at our council meeting at 4/27/20. And I will speak to Mr. Westfall had reached out, was I'll say unaware to attend that meeting because of perhaps lots of reasons, if not the pandemic itself. But he is, I believe, Mr. Westfall is here. So certainly the item was acted on and action was taken on it. And I know you wish to speak. You didn't get a chance to speak then. Certainly would like to provide you the opportunity to speak now, and certainly can take questions with regard to the from the council. So we'll let Mr. Westfall speak to this item. Thank you.
And I think Brian back there has a presentation. Here it is.
Okay.
Next slide. So, next, there you go. First of all, thank you all for literally all the work you do all the time. You spend a lot of time in its chambers, and I truly appreciate that. I love the city of Homewood, and I've worked with some of you on various things, and you guys work hard. Thank you also for fixing what I think is the problem that I'm going to be asking to get reimbursed about. And so thanks for that as well. I'm speaking, by the way, on behalf of Hummingbird Properties. Hummingbird Properties owns the property in question. I am not speaking on behalf of Caveat Coffee. That is the business that is my tenant. Just a little history of ownership. My wife and I, through Hummingbird Properties, purchased the property from Shasta Afghan in 2015. The property was vacant until Caveat developed it in the second half of 2017. They began business in the first quarter of 2018. Next slide, please. This is just a Google map to kind of show you where the property is located. It is between Linden and Crescent along Reese. You might know where Caveat Coffee is. The area that we're going to talk about is on the alley, which is between Linden and Crescent, and that's that white street behind Caveat is actually the alley. It looks wide enough to be a street. It's the alley between Linden and Crescent. It's not labeled. We're going to be mainly focused on the, if you see on there, Caveat Coffee, and behind that to the west is the backyard, and then the alley. You're going to see a video that is me walking through that alley. It'll all make sense once you see the video. So just a little reference there. Next slide, please. There are two problems that involve rainwater, both of which were present prior to our purchase of the property, both of which involve city property, i.e. the sewer, and the alley, and city responsibility to rectify, both of which have been reported to the city for many years, which I'll also show you tonight. One of these problems has caused flooding onto the property at 2832 Linden Avenue. The other problem causes a nuisance of ponding in the alley and the parking area. Hummingbird Properties is here to request, or I would have been here last time to request if I thought I needed to be. One, reimbursement for our expenses as it relates to the flooding caused by the city storm sewer in the amount of $6,094.32. You will note from the previous that is an increase of $350 from our previous request. I'll get to that reason in a minute. The reimbursement up to $6,000 was agreed to unanimously by the Finance Committee on March the 16th of 2020. We believe there must have been some confusion or miscommunication based on the actions of the City Council after your last meeting, because I think the resolution we were offered was about half of that, and we were asked to sign a release. We hope to clear that confusion up tonight. I think we'll all be on the same page once I finish my presentation. The second thing we'd like to request is to amend the release that we were actually asked to sign. I've sent an amended release to Jennifer via email. The release we were asked to sign asked us to relieve the city of any future damages or flooding, which is overreaching for any release for anybody. You can't really predict future damages on y'all's behalf. If y'all happen to do something that causes this problem, I can't release you now from something you might do in the future. So I had to send that to the attorney to have that reworded, which is where the other $350 comes from, to essentially correct the release that we were asked to sign by the city in order to receive the money that y'all had agreed to give us through the Finance Committee. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Number three, there is further work to be done by the city to rectify the ponding, not the flooding, the ponding, and I'll show you the two differences between the two following. Next slide, please. Problem number one is flooding.
Hold on a second. We're not here on an item for further work, okay? So we don't need to talk about further work. That's going to be a separate item you need to take up with, separate and apart from this. We are here on an item that we took action on in consideration of it. If there are, we
If
certainly want to
if-
fix the problem, but it's not here before council is my point, so I don't want to
I
get
got you. I just,
sidetracked
if,
on that.
Mr. Cobb here?
So, is Mr. Cobb here?
The problem is that Mr. Cobb thinks both problems are the same. And so I'm going to show you that both problems are not the same and that there are two different problems. So I think you will, I mean, I hear you. I'll bring it up again if we need to for the other problem. But Mr. Cobb, my understanding is, well, I don't actually understand what he thinks, honestly. So I'd love to hear what he thinks.
Yeah, well, hold on a second, Mr. Ward. Mr. Jones?
We have spent so much time discussing this.
Yeah.
I don't want to go any further on this until we have a representative from our department. Otherwise, we are wasting our time.
I disagree, but okay.
Well, I mean, we can gather what we need, but we rely on professionals within the city to determine what is best for the city.
Sure.
And I'm not going to be able to see your PowerPoint and determine what is best. We went for 30 minutes last time with Mr. Cobb explaining kind of the situation. And if he's not here tonight, then I would move we carry this over.
Well, hold on a second. Hold on. Is he available on Zoom? Is he available?
We just need representation from
He
the
just walked
city.
out 3 minutes ago.
Okay. But I want him to see.
Sure.
I want him to see your full presentation.
I'd be
I guess
great.
so
I will
that
come
we
back
can-
whenever you ask me to come back and
Okay.
present to
That'd
the
be-
entire group
All right.
at your pleasure. I have no problem with that whatsoever. I'd love
All
to
right,
present to
and
Mr. Cobb.
I understand. I mean, it's a matter,
That's totally fine with me.
because what we're trying to do is get to our little $6,000 problem here and fix it, you know. And if there's, you know, additional repair stuff, and what I'm hearing from Mr. Jones is he kind of wants to get both of y'all in here at the same time. I'm really sorry he is not here, and I'm a little surprised he's not here. But,
okay. It's no problem at all.
because
I'll be
it's-
glad to come back again.
Sure, and hold on a second. So I just want to make sure if there's any, I mean, we'll have to have another, carry this item over. You know, and it's probably the most appropriate thing so we can get to the bottom of it. Hold on a second, I got some other comments here. Mr. White, if you'll just, yeah, you can use this microphone here, Alex. There you go. Yeah, well, understand we've got committee and council together anyhow, so however you want to handle it. So, you know, I don't know if it makes much of a difference, but listen, unless there's some raging interest, the committee's going to be here. We have it here in council. We can move it to committee and vote on it there and vote it to council again if you guys want
President
to.
Wright,
We have it. Yes, ma'am.
Greg said he'll be back in 2 minutes if you want to wait or you'll. see the
Okay,
committee.
let's get this done tonight, okay? Can we do that? Greg is here. All right, did he say how long?
He said 2 minutes.
2 minutes, okay. All right, why don't you go ahead and finish? Well, I'm sorry, was that your point? You wanted Mr. Cobb? All right, so hang in there. I'm sorry for the confusion.
He was earlier.
No, we do. Yes, Mr. Hickenbotham?
Ms. Salter, I mean, Mr. Brigette just came and said he was going to be back in a couple of minutes. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Mr. Brigette just came in and said that
Okay,
Greg said
so
he would
he's
be
coming
back in
back.
2 minutes.
Yeah, so we're going to do it tonight. We're going to get this done. I'll tell you what, so why don't we just carry this over? Let's see if we can finish up these couple other items. As soon as Greg is here, we'll bring it back and we'll get this addressed tonight, okay, sir? All right, thank you for everybody's patience, cooperation, helping us get through it. We just want to hear everybody's viewpoint. We can make a decision. All right, so we're going to carry that item over. Next item will be 090520, which is a request to authorize the mayor to sign a contract for services and pay fiscal year 2019-2020 budgeted appropriation for to the Prescott House. This is coming to us from Melody Salter, our city clerk and assistant finance director. And
Yes, sir. We had this budgeted for $2,500. We just
doing our standard procedure of authorizing the mayor, y'all to authorize the mayor to sign the contract so we can pay out what the budgeted amount.
The budgeted amount, okay. Any further questions or discussion? Mr. Hickenbotham? Oh, move for approval from Mr. Hickenbotham, second by Mr. McCluskey. Y'all moving fast. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that's going to be a 9-0 vote.
It's going to be 2070, is that what you got? Resolution 2070.
Resolution 2070, thank you. All right, next item, 10-0520, request to allow Soho Social to place tables in the plaza for use by all restaurants, and without objection, we're going to go ahead and drop this item.
Okay.
So 10-0520 will be dropped. 11-0520 is a request to authorize the mayor to sign an ALDOT agreement for the Diverging Diamond project. Coming to us from the mayor's office and Ms. Salter. And we would, I think we do, there has been a request to consider this, to pass this, since we haven't seen it, pending Mr. Kendrick's review. And so, all right, so Mr. Jones is moving to approve pending Mr. Kendrick's review of this item. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. McCluskey. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that is 11-0 vote, and that will be Resolution 20-71.
Was that Mr., I know Mr. Jones was the first, was that McCluskey for the second?
Yes.
Okay.
I would like to remind the council that ALDOT is not terribly flexible on their agreements, but we will certainly review.
We'll look forward to your review nonetheless.
I'm not able to change words.
Sometimes we expect a lot out of you, sir. All right, so I see Mr. Cobb is back with us. So, Mr. Westfall, Mr. Westfall, I'll ask for you to return. We're going to revisit item 080520, and Mr. Westfall was presenting. Mr. Cobb, thank you for being here. I think you know what this item is about. We just want to make sure we get a full, complete picture and view so we can make our decision and we can all move forward. All right, Mr. Westfall, thank you for your cooperation.
Thanks again.
Please proceed.
So, Brian, if you can start again at the beginning so Mr. Cobb can hear the whole presentation, I guess. And thank you again for listening. And I detected a little frustration with the time that's been spent on this from Mr. Jones, and I'm sorry that it's taken up your time. It's certainly taken up months of my time to manage this problem, so I understand the frustration on your part, but yours is probably 1/100th of the frustration I'm currently feeling. So if you'll just bear with me for a second and let me share what we've been going through for the last few months, and not only us, but owners of this property for many years before us. So thank you for your patience, and I realize you have a lot to do, and I realize $6,000 is not much money. And I was a little surprised we didn't just dismiss with that last time, and we wouldn't even be here. So once again, thank you all. I represent Homewood Properties, the owner of the property, not Caveat Coffee, the business that is our tenant at the property. We purchased it from Shasta Afghan April 2015. Property sat vacant until Caveat developed the building in the second half of 2017, began business in the first quarter of 2018. Next slide shows a map of the city. Greg knows exactly where this is, so I won't spend much time on that. Y'all have seen that. Two problems that involve rainwater. It looks like one problem, which is why I'm discussing both of them tonight, because there's been some confusion through anybody I've talked to about this, about what is going on the property. So I'd like to share everything that's going on. If you don't want to act on my number 3 request, that is totally fine with me, but it's just confusing if you don't talk about it all as one thing. So we have 3 things we're asking for.
Please understand, I didn't mean we didn't want to act on it tonight, meaning it's not before us tonight. We certainly, if there's work to be done in a future issue, absolutely we want to address things that are the responsibility of the city to address. Okay,
thank you.
Please proceed.
Okay, so we have two problems that involve rainwater, both of which were present prior to our purchase of the property, both of which involve city property, i.e. the city sewer and the city alley. And it's the city's responsibility to rectify them, one of which I think they have rectified. Thank you very much again for that. Greg, thank you for getting that done. Both of these have been reported to the city for many years, one of which has caused flooding on the property at Linden Avenue. That's the one I think we've rectified. The other of which causes ponding in the alley and parking area, which is yet to be rectified. So we're asking for the reimbursement of our expenses, a little over $6,000, We're also asking to amend the release.
Ms. Westfall, I can't, because I just want to make sure we do this properly.
Yes, sir.
When you say this has been reported to the city for many years and the city has not acted upon
Yes, sir.
things that were reported to it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. And I will give you further evidence of that on through this is kind of just an overview, and I'll come back and you'll understand more of it as we go through. So we'd also like to amend the release that we were asked to sign to receive the money that you had offered before, or any money we're offered after tonight. I've sent a copy of that amended release to Jennifer Andrus. It's subtly changed, but it does not relieve the city from future damages should you do something in the future to cause us harm, which obviously we can't release you from that at this point. It's overreaching. Next slide. Now, understanding the problem. First is flooding in the backyard and in the building. And we're talking 18 inches of rain standing in the entire backyard of Caveat Coffee within 45 minutes. You see the 18 inches on the tape measure there. You see Nate standing in the backyard. Next slide, please. This is a view of the entire backyard underwater. It's not raining anymore, but the water's sitting there because the sewer has been blocked. It can't leave because the sewer is blocked. No one disagrees the sewer is blocked. The city has now unblocked the sewer and put a new sewer pipe in, and now the sewer drains. Okay? No misunderstanding on that. This is not rainwater collecting. We don't receive 18 inches of rain in 45 minutes in the history of mankind. Okay? Next slide. This is problem number 2. I realize we're probably not going to address rectifying that, but let me clarify. This is ponding in the alley and in our what has now been our parking space. That has been happening long before Caveat did any changes, and I have witnesses to testify to that if need be. This is a second problem. This is the problem. This is not causing flooding in our yard. It's confusing to people. They see that and say, oh, well, you got a low spot there. That is not what's causing flooding. What's causing flooding, I'll get to, is the storm sewer, which is obstructed. Next slide, please. So now, back to problem 1, the storm sewer that's obstructed, hopefully resolved. The blockage leads to recurrent, sudden, and substantial flooding in the backyard of 2832 Linden. Next slide, please. This is a schematic, and if you look on the right side, you'll see that's a little bit of a map. You see the block that says Caveat Coffee. This should look similar to your Google map. So it's Caveat Coffee, and then the backyard, and you see the alley, which has the pipe drawn in, and then it's magnified to the left, and that's a increased view of the pipes. This is just a schematic. It's not actually to scale or anything. What has occurred is there is Linden, 2832 Linden is at the end of this alley. It's the last input to the sewer. And that sewer should take a hard right and go across the properties behind us. You can see where it now does that. The city has repaired that, and they've now put that in, and it now goes to Crescent. Before they did that, it was a blind end that held about 17,000 gallons of water. I know that because I pumped water out of it on multiple occasions over 2 months with 360 gallons per minute from a trash pump. It took 45 minutes every time. You could step your watch to it to pump it out. That's the size of a 15 by 15 room that's 10 feet high. That's how much water sits under the surface there in that pool. There was nowhere for it to go. So once it's full, then any more water coming into that system from the city storm sewer would come out of the lowest inlet. Water's going to get out. The lowest inlet was mine. I was the last input, therefore I'm the lowest inlet. So what happens is when that void gets full, it then floods the yard within a matter of 45 minutes, 18 inches. I mean, it's amazing. This has happened for 20 years. You say, well, why didn't the city know about this? The city has been informed of this many times. I called Shaista Afghan, who I bought the property from, since all this has been happening and since the city gave some pushback, and because the city was saying, city being Mr. Cobb, and I have full respect for Mr. Cobb, but I just disagree with him on this. He was saying that Caveat Coffee caused this problem. And I called the previous owner. I said, did y'all have a problem with flooding? She said, all the time. She said, if it rained 2 or 3 days in a row, I would have to send my employees home because they couldn't do their sewing in the bottom. It used to be Alabama reweaving. I said, did you ever tell anyone? She said, we told the city many times. She said, we also told my landlord. Now, she was not the owner. She was the tenant. The landlord would tell her, hey, sorry, it's the city's problem. The city would say, it's not our problem. It's the landlord's problem. So that was pushed back and forth. We came into the property recently. I have a different arrangement with my tenant. I trust my tenant. She came to me and said, hey, we got a serious problem. I don't think I can continue to operate business here. I said, what's the problem? We called over 2 years. I called Mr. Cobb's office, went to him in person. She as well did, Jennifer Mims, 4 to 6 times, said, there is a problem here. Please evaluate. Please evaluate. Nothing was done. Well, I shouldn't say that. They came and blew out with a truck that, in case there's like a branch obstruction or something. But it kept happening. So the final straw came this February when it happened one more time, and Jennifer said, I don't think I can do business anymore. I said, hold on, Jennifer. Let me see if I can figure out what the problem is. So I lifted up one manhole cover, and it was full, and it wasn't moving anywhere. I said, Greg, the sewer clearly is not moving. Please figure it out. Well, at some point, someone had dropped in the sewer, took a picture. There's a 4-foot concrete block wall blocking the sewer. And then they got a video crew, found the same thing. Now they fixed it. It goes that way. Everybody's happy. All I'm asking for is to pay, well, during this 2-month process, I rented a pump to pump the sewer out because every time it rained, it would flood the yard and possibly flood my tenant, and she was probably going to leave. So I got my tail and I pumped that thing out. Darby, how many times would you say I left home during the middle of the night to pump out that sewer? At night. Yes, they brought us cones. Half a time, half a dozen at night. That doesn't count how many times during the day. Count another 10 or 12, okay? We're talking all night long and working the next day. This has been a long time for me, Mr. Jones. I know you're frustrated, but my friend, you're not nearly as frustrated as I am, and I've been very pleasant through this whole process. You can ask Mr. Cobb. You can ask Wyatt Pugh. I'm working with the city. I love the city. I'm trying to help you guys. All I'm asking for is pay me for the damage the last flood caused, and the cost for renting the pump to pump it out that the city said I could. The city, Mr. Cobb, I think will back me up, they don't have a pump like that. They can't pay someone and go do it. So I said, well, I'll do it till you get it figured out. It was teamwork. But I was baffled when the finance committee said, yes, we'll pay you $6,000, and then it came to the city council and they said, no, we're not going to do that. We'll give you half. And not only that, sign this release. It says you'll never come to us again if we have any more flooding. I'm like, are y'all? Clearly just a miscommunication, because I know you're more logical than that. This is so obvious. So that is problem number one. Now, if you care, next slide, please. Covered that. Next slide. Was it a new problem? No, it's been going on for many years. This is not new. Next slide. And Shaista Afghan, I've got her telephone number. She said be glad to call her if y'all want to check with that. I gave the same name to the finance committee. All right, this is a video. Do y'all want to see more? I got 3 videos.
I think we've probably seen enough.
What you're going to see in the following
Hold the video.
Is the process.
Y'all, if you, let me put it this way. If you're thinking you're still doubtful, let me know and I'll keep going. But if you're convinced, I'll shut up and we can move on with our lives and do other things.
Yeah, I think, again, I'll let the council speak. If anybody wants to hear more on this, I think what we got hear from Mr. Cobb too, with the response. I think that's really what's probably most needed.
Okay. So, and I would love for him to see the video. I mean, so I'm not, if you need to see the videos, I've got them. It'll show, couple minutes, 2 minutes. Play the video.
No, all right, Mr. Cobb, you want to speak to this so we can kind of move forward?
My concern was on the release is that this is going to happen again. There's too much water going in, and there's that one little way for it to get out. When you're at the back gate, and I've got a picture of water standing there, where your parking area is, that area is at 6 inches higher than the patio. Okay, I went over and surveyed it. I ran a profile all the way out. It's got 1 inch of fall in the first 17 feet towards the alley. From the patio towards the alley, the first 17 feet has 1 inch. And then there's that little tail ditch on the end. But when you've got all the water coming in from all those sides, So it's coming at you from 4 directions, and it's just got one little place to get out. It's gonna happen again.
So are you saying water from the groundwater falling onto Caveat Coffee's ground is causing the flooding in the backyard?
No, that's not, let me finish.
Okay.
Okay. What he said about the pipe that was blocked is true. We fixed that. But I never heard about it until the first time he called me. And I immediately called Streets and asked them to go clean the pipes. They did. It happened again. I went, come on, Streets. So they got, ma'am, sir?
When was that? About, just curious.
I guess it was
Timeframe.
after your first big flood is when I got Streets over there. They got them, they already cleaned it once.
It's been over the course of 2 years. The first flood happened the first month or two they were there.
Okay.
They've been open for 2 years.
All right, but let me say this. They say it's going on for 20 years. I don't know who they called, but it wasn't me, because I had never heard about it until y'all.
I don't doubt.
Okay. Anyway, after I had them clean the pipes, and it happened again, we finally got Video Industrial to come over there, and I think it happened a second time by the time they got there. And that's when they found the blockage in the pipe. I've yet to have anybody tell me a straight answer of how that came to be. But we fixed all that. We're done. But what I'm saying about the grading of the lot doesn't have adequate drainage. And I promise you, if we get another rain like we had in, was it February, it will flood again. Because it's coming at it from all sides, and it's got one little place to get
What
out.
do you mean coming at it from all sides?
The sidewalk is higher, and it drains into there. Your parking lot is higher.
The sidewalk does not drain into there.
Okay.
All right,
I have a video.
all
I'll
right.
show you.
Listen,
I will give you evidence.
Mr. Westfall, let's,
All right, here's my only question.
you can say your side, and he can say his side,
Okay.
okay? There's no need for anyone, he's not telling you that you're wrong, you don't need to tell him that he's wrong. We just, let's hear from both sides, and
Okay.
we'll go from there.
All I can tell you is I took a survey level over there, and the others, all the other sides are higher, okay? The way it stands in the gravel parking lot between there and the alley. I really am not concerned with what y'all do about what you pay or you don't pay. I just can see it. I know it's going to do it again in a big storm.
Okay.
Unless you regrade that lot. You're going to have to take that lot all the
All
way
right.
down to the,
Mr. Thames.
no, it's more like 40, 50 feet. The, well, from the patio, I didn't go all the way up under the, it's got a roof over it. The edge of the patio, the edge of the concrete, the first 17 feet falls 1 inch. And then his ditch starts picking it up and it moves it out.
And then there's, so does get there, wants to put it back to the patio, you go up or down, right? There are basement entrance.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Greg, answer this. How can 18 inches of water accumulate from rainfall on the ground?
I know it came from the pipe. I'm not denying that.
Okay, so then my point is it's not going to happen again because the pipe's moving out. It doesn't flood.
No, it will.
I've been there. I've pumped out that pipe for 2 months during the worst rainfall on record, and it hadn't flooded the backyard once. Rainfall in the yard does not accumulate. I'm not worried about rainfall in the yard whatsoever. The pipe is pumping the pipe clear solves my problem. I don't understand how that is not conceptually.
Because when that pipe gets overloaded, it's going to back up. Plus the fact that there's more coming in faster than what it can run out. It's a time and concentration thing. Okay, all this water hits the ground, and it's going.
Let me ask you this: how fast will it's a 3-foot pipe, right? You got probably a 1% grade. How many gallons per minute will that flow out?
I got no idea.
Well, I do. About 2,000 gallons a minute if you calculate it on Google.
Okay, so while you did those,
I've been pumping out 360 gallons a minute, so you got 4 to 5 times the volume going to leave that pipe than what I was leaving the pipe, and I left 360 gallons a minute on the pipe. And
All right, guys, thank y'all. All right, let's all come back and let's see if we have any questions. Let's hear from the council. I think we've got the views. Mr. Westfall, thank you. Mr. Cobb, thank you very much for elaborating. I don't know if I think we've got the issues in front of us, and we have an item that I guess now is $6,094.32. Is that right? Do I have the number right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and approximately half of that was, I don't have the exact number what was paid last time, but.
It wasn't paid. I never picked it up.
I'm sorry, approved, okay? It was approved to be paid. Okay. All right, so it has not been, so if there's a change either up or down, we'll have to amend the previous resolution. All right. So, first of all, comments, questions, let's get this resolved, fellas. All right.
I got one.
Mr. Harden?
Mr. Cobb, my question, and Dr. Westfall, has it rained since we cleaned it out? And if it rains and it doesn't flood, and we have a massive rain, then that was the problem. If it rains and it floods, then that's not the only problem. And isn't it that simple? I mean, we're making a huge...
It's as simple as that. We cannot guarantee him that place won't flood again.
Sure, I understand
That's where I am.
Sure,
Because
sure.
that rain we had in February was excessive. We hadn't seen a rain like that in a long time. We get another one of those hurricane blows through here, where the tornadoes, when they get here, I'm not going to ever stand here and say that thing's not going to flood again.
No, because it's below grade. And I've been out there twice looking at it, trying to figure out exactly where the flood is. But today, it's hard to sit around and know when we're going to have a heavy rain like that again. But if it clearly goes away and a big rain comes and he doesn't flood, then it was all the drain. If it doesn't, I mean, isn't that the final solution for us to understand? If a big rain comes, whatever happens is we'll know at that point, I think.
That's
I hate
right.
to stretch this anymore.
That was the whole purpose of, to release us from this, because the city can't just guarantee every piece of property's not going to
But,
flood.
Mr. Cobb, was that not like a 100-year event?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So statistically, it's unlikely we're going to have another event like that.
Well, all the storm drainage is built to what's called a 25-year storm, okay? So anytime you exceed a 25-year storm, you can expect it to flood, because that's all the pipes will hold. There's not a pipe big enough in the world to make all this city drain. Everybody's seen Griffin Creek come out of its banks.
All right, all right. We're just answering questions right now, okay? If somebody answers a question, all right, and I'm not trying to give Mr. Cobb more time than you, I promise you, just trying to answer questions. All right, we're at the council. Any further questions or discussion from the council on this item? Mr. Wyatt, please, sir.
My question is about the release. Normally a release releases you from liability for anything arising out of what's been fixed. Your concern is that the release does more than that?
It does. The council directed it to be a release for all future business. The release that they drafted changed two things. Changed it for the name, not an issue. It changed it since we released it early, and it was since we had it. I have looked at a specific council and presumed the request to be corrected, the release be as directed requested for any future business.
So the release, your revisions to the release are limited to releasing the city forever or what's occurred before today.
That's what I look at. As of today, everything prior to that. Going forward, it's not.
Okay, any further questions or discussion? All right, yes, Mr. Wilberson.
Just real quick, and I did ask this last time, but Mr. Westfall was not on the call, obviously, which is why we're here tonight. Relating to the pump charges, 3 different amounts, 3 different dates. The first 2 were roughly the same. They were close, $311.95, $325.21. The third one was for $637.16. I'm not sure why the amounts differed so much. If I mean,
All
I've
right,
rented stuff.
what are those amounts for, so we know what you're
The
talking-
pump rental.
Pump
The
rental.
This
I'm
is the
sorry.
Sunbelt invoice.
I started at 2 weeks and converted to a month. The month rate was cheaper. I actually saved the city about probably $600 by negotiating with them when I went back.
So you're saying that's what accounts for the February 19th and the February 28th charges? Okay.
The 200-300s, yeah, and then the 600 was for the next month. At the finance committee, they said, well, it's probably going to, Greg said, it's probably going to take a month, so you better you can keep pumping. So I rented it for another month. So it's 2 months total. Sunbelt Rentals, I've got all the receipts if you need to see them.
Okay, and then just to clarify too, because I'm not getting a great picture of this. So I understand there's a remediation cleanup, charge in the amount of $37.50 from Curtis Environmental. from what I remember you describing, that included some drywall and some other mitigation. Where I'm still a little bit confused is if it has flooded since then.
It has not. Because I've been pumping. That's the whole point. It would have
Gotcha.
flooded many times since then, but I saved the city $3,700 every time it rained because I was doing the sewer's job. And I know we talked about the 25-year flood. This happens 3 to 4 times every year. It's not 25-year flood. I'm not asking you to never guarantee it's not going to flood again in 100 years. I'm thanking you for having cleared the sewer. I took the pump back because I know it's not going to flood 4 times a year like it's been flooding for the last 20 years, because now I have a sewer. I didn't used to have one. I used to have a swimming pool below ground.
Okay, so I understand the charges a little bit better here. And just to clarify, the original discussion, the last time I think that Mr. Westfall was present, we did discuss actual charges, and there was some discussion about whether or not accounting for one's time was an actual recouped cost or not. But that's just my recollection of what we discussed. So, and I will say, I understand the desire to, bring your own counsel into it and everything else.
I am not represented by counsel.
Well, you added an extra $350 attorney fee.
I fixed the release that you, and as Mr. Kendrick said,
right. I'm just saying it was a little.
I'm just telling you, I'm not represented by. I want to make that clear. I do not have counsel present. I don't want to bring counsel into this. I took your release and sent it to a lawyer, like I do all my things I sign, and he said, please don't sign that. No one would sign that. It's future damages. You don't sign stuff like that. He had to revise it, and so now I brought it to you to be used. I think Mr. Kendrick agrees it's reasonable. He said he has no issues with it. So I'm saying because you gave me, essentially Greg was put in a line there that I had to get corrected through Cerrodi and Permute that's who my attorney is. So it's $350. You guys cost me $350 because you gave me a crappy release. I don't know what to tell you.
For the record, I'm just trying to indicate that I think it would have been more prudent to discuss that prior to going ahead and doing that, to make it a more agreeable solution. But that's fine.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Jones.
Well, I feel like when we go back to the original presentation that was made to finance, at that point we were under 6,000. We felt like it was reasonable. We made the recommendation. It got here, and then we ended up at half. And the Zoom call, sometimes we lose things in translation. But at this point, I would want to go back to what was originally recommended in finance, adding another 100 or whatever it's like up to that, and then take care of just the indemnification, not for forever. I mean, that I understand, and no, I didn't make the motion. I didn't make the motion. Well, we need an indemnification, but not for perpetuity. We need. We need
Release.
right. We need a
He
release.
used the wrong term.
But not. We need a release up until today. That's so. I understand. Zoom, zoom, zoom. Okay. I understand, and that's what I'm saying. When we got to I think we maybe talked about this for 45 minutes. When we get to that point, I think we kind of lose focus, and I think that's kind of where we are. So, I mean, I would just move that we approve up to 6,100 with the proper release up until today. That's my motion that I would make at this point.
All right, so we have a motion to approve at 6,100 with a release
that would cover
up to today.
Up to today.
And
all right.
Mr. Kendrick, are you okay with the one?
And we
that I
have a
sent you?
second by Ms. Andrus. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Abstention from me and abstention from Ms. Smith. And so, Ms. Smith. So the item is 6100 approved.
President Wright also abstained.
Oh, I'm sorry, who? Oh, yes. I thought- Yes, I didn't hear what he said. I thought he said he was abstaining too, so.
Do I need to take the gavel?
All right, yeah, I'm sorry. We have a 9-0-2 vote, okay? Mrs. Smith and Mr. Wright. All right, sorry about that. All right, thank you. All right, next item is 120520, request to change the date of the second council meeting in May due to Memorial Day holiday. So this is going to be, oh Lord, give me a calendar up here. So it's going to be the 18th. We're going to actually have, what you got? Well, I'll defer to you guys. I suggest we just all come in here on Monday, do committee meetings before, and drive on to council meeting. Not ideal, but we do have a Memorial Day, although it is Memorial Day. Although it's going to be a different Memorial Day holiday, I suppose, but nonetheless, we would certainly not choose to be here. So, do I have any objections to doing that? Going ahead and doing committee meetings followed by council meetings. Okay. Yeah, and we'll get there when we start scheduling the committee meetings. So, all right, I'll entertain a motion for approval. By Mr. Harden. Second by Mr. Thames. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, so we will have a double meeting next Monday, the 18th. All right, next item, 130520, request for consideration of approval for vouchers for period of April 28th, 2020 through May 11th, 2020. And Mrs. Smith, we are going to, what is it? You know, we're going to have to give her like a
big
bonus. Medal of Freedom or something, you know.
Medal of Freedom.
So, Mrs. Smith, thank you so much. I'll turn it over to you.
I reviewed the invoices today and only had just a couple of questions, and honestly, some of them were of my own doing because, frankly, I just couldn't pay attention anymore. So Robert answered everything. Everything is in order, and I would move that we pay the bills.
All right. I have a motion by Mrs. Smith, second by Mr. Thames. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Vouchers are approved through May 11th. That was Thames, yes. Vouchers are approved through May 11th, 2020. Okay, that gets us to our end of our agenda. And do we have the mayor to talk? Mayor?
Mr. President, how are you?
Hanging in there.
Good. I was doing great until halfway through the presentation, the last presentation, and my Zoom dropped, so I don't know what happened, but I had to beg Brian to let me back in on audio.
Good, good.
So, great meeting tonight. Thank y'all very much for what you do, and kind of exciting to see our city start to get back in the swing of things. I think most people are really happy to start moving in that direction. Only had a couple of emails, really, people complaining about social distancing, but I think for the most part, people are really trying hard to do that and to make it work. So thanks to all of our businesses for hanging in there. Thanks to our residents who have been so great to try to support them any way they could during all this, and just think it speaks to our city and to the folks that are here. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate that. Mr. Gwaltney. We look forward to it. Thank you, sir. Mr. Thames?
P&D will be at 4:45. And no one else. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jones?
It's at 4, and I don't have anything additional. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McCluskey?
Yeah, I do not think that I'm going to call public safety because the only thing that I've got on the agenda is the turn signal that we're waiting on the power box and everything for, and it could be goodness knows how long, so I'm not going to, I just won't call. I think it's not on here. So we'll take a rest on public safety for a little while.
All right, thank you, sir. And I'm sorry I threw the wards off, you know, I'm visually impaired here, or visually focused here. All right, Mr. Wolverton, I'll go to you, and then I'll go to Mr. Hickenbottom.
Thank you. Just a belated Happy Mother's Day to Jennifer and Melody and Barry and all the other moms out there. And I want to thank Berkeley and Parks Department for opening up some green spaces. I know that that is a welcome change, and just want to encourage people to continue to abide by the social distancing standards and not, you know, trying to keep our distance and you know, ride this out as long as is needed. Encouraged by the businesses that are able to open back up, and again, just reminder to try and get out there and get to them as much as you can. So that's it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hickenbottom.
Nothing tonight, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And Mrs. Smith?
Brett, how long do you need for P&D? Then special issues at 5, and I'm good. I don't have anything else.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Wyatt? Okay. That's called lazy, but that's, you know, at least you admit it. Mr. Harden? You have to come up to the microphone, unfortunately, sir. I'm sorry.
I'm just glad to be back. I think we get a lot more done when we're here together than doing Zoom calls. I think we limit what we get done on Zoom calls. Of course, they're a lot quicker. If y'all have noticed, all your Zoom calls are so much quicker than
Don't knock Zoom calls, yeah. So, thank you, Mr. Harden. Ms. Andrus?
Right, nobody can leave until you record your script. Andrew, I have your script here. And also striping, is Greg still here? Striping has appeared at our crosswalk on Lakeshore at the Marriott. A couple more weeks and that thing's going to be turned on, and we're going to have a brand new crosswalk going across a state highway adjacent to another state highway. So happy. All right, nobody can leave. That's it.
Thank you. And let me make sure we have our fire department's finest in the back. Did y'all have any, we didn't have anything we skipped over, did we? You guys are just protecting us. I hope you're being entertained. So, all right. Thank you all for the effort, hanging in there, getting the stuff done. Thank you for all the inconvenience. It will get better as we go along. I'm afraid this will not be a rare thing. I'm not being pessimistic. I think we're going to have a few of these. Let's hope we only have a few of these, but let's hope we're not doing this through the fall. But thank you all. Thanks to the mayor and for all our city workers for continuing to take care of us and take care of our residents, and glad to see that we're getting some businesses back out there, and everybody stay safe, and we will look forward to seeing everyone. And can I just stop 1 second here and say, it really is nice to see some faces. So thank you. Mr. Wolverton, you had one other thing?
Just a quick question. Is special issues going to take an hour?
Yeah, so,
Correct.
so my guess is I'm anticipating with
Something will
everything
go along.
that will probably be done by 5:30, which will give us a nice cushion to make sure we can get to the 6 o'clock meeting. Yeah, righto. So I'm not gonna push it. All right. So without anything further, I think that's it. We'll see you guys next week. Thank y'all.